The day started like any other. The sun peeked through the curtains, casting a warm glow across the room. I stretched, feeling the familiar comfort of my bed, and took a deep breath, ready to face another day. I woke up, let my Labrador Sparky out, and made coffee. The aroma of freshly brewed coffee filled the kitchen, a scent that always managed to lift my spirits. Sparky, with his boundless energy, darted into the backyard, eager to chase the morning birds. It was a Tuesday, the most mundane day of the week. The streets were quiet, with most people already at work or school. The tranquility of the neighborhood was both comforting and a little eerie, a stark contrast to the hustle and bustle of the weekends. After scrolling through social media and clearing my inbox, I decided to take Sparky for a walk. The notifications on my phone were the usual mix of work emails, social media updates, and a few messages from friends. Nothing urgent, nothing out of the ordinary. We ended up on Elm Street, our usual route. The tree-lined street was Sparky's favorite, with plenty of interesting smells and the occasional squirrel to chase. As we walked, I couldn't help but appreciate the simple beauty of our neighborhood. As lunchtime approached, I felt a pang of hunger. My stomach growled, reminding me that it had been a while since breakfast. Sparky, ever the empathetic companion, seemed to sense my hunger and looked up at me with his big brown eyes. Sparky whined, probably sensing my thoughts. His tail wagged in anticipation, as if he knew that our walk was about to take a delicious turn. I couldn't help but smile at his enthusiasm. "McDonald's it is," I mumbled, more to myself than to him. The thought of a Big Mac and fries was suddenly very appealing. Sparky, always up for an adventure, seemed to agree with my choice. There was a McDonald's a few blocks down, a regular haunt for us. The familiar golden arches came into view, and I quickened my pace, eager to satisfy my hunger. Sparky trotted beside me, his tail wagging in excitement. As we approached the restaurant, I couldn't help but think about how these small, ordinary moments made life so special. As we walked, the day grew strangely quiet. The usual traffic hum seemed to fade, replaced by an unsettling stillness. I noticed the streetlights flickering erratically. A wave of unease washed over me. It felt like static, a tingling sensation that ran from my head to my toes. I paused, pulling Sparky close. He whimpered, sensing my discomfort. I shook my head, dismissing the sensation as a trick of my senses. We continued walking, the silence pressing in on me. We reached the corner where the McDonald's should have been. It was a place I had visited countless times, a familiar landmark in my daily routine. The bright red and yellow colors, the inviting smell of fries, and the cheerful buzz of people enjoying their meals were all etched in my memory. But instead of the familiar red and yellow facade, there was a building I didn't recognize. It looked out of place, almost as if it had been transported from another era. The structure was old, with a sign that seemed to have weathered many storms. The windows were dusty and the door creaked as it swung open. It was still a McDonald's, but the design was different, older somehow. The architecture reminded me of the 1950s with its retro style and vintage charm. The golden arches were there, but they looked like they had seen better days. The whole place had a nostalgic feel, like a relic from the past. The golden arches seemed to sag and the paint was faded. It was as if time had taken its toll on this once vibrant establishment. The colors were dull, and the once shiny surfaces were now covered in a layer of grime. It was a stark contrast to the lively and modern McDonald's I was used to. I blinked, my mind struggling to reconcile what I was seeing. How could this be the same place? It felt like I had stepped into a different reality, one where things were not quite right. The familiar had become unfamiliar, and it left me feeling disoriented. Had it always looked like this? I wondered if my memory was playing tricks on me. Maybe I had never really paid attention to the details before. But no, I was sure this was different. Something had changed, and I couldn't shake the feeling that it was significant. Sparky whined again, pulling at his leash. He seemed to sense my unease, his eyes darting around nervously. I patted his head, trying to reassure him, but the truth was I needed reassurance myself. The whole situation was unsettling, and I couldn't put my finger on why. I felt a tremor of fear. Something was wrong. This wasn't just a case of a building being neglected or falling into disrepair. There was an eerie quality to it, a sense that something more sinister was at play. I took a deep breath, trying to steady my nerves. But the feeling of dread lingered. What had happened to the McDonald's I knew, and why did this place feel so off? I hesitantly entered the McDonald's, the door chiming with a shrill, unfamiliar tone. The interior was dimly lit and eerily quiet. There were only a handful of customers, all of them staring vacantly into space. Behind the counter, the employees were pale and unsmiling, their movements mechanical. They wore uniforms I'd never seen before, their name tags blank. I approached the counter, Sparky pressing against my leg. "Can I help you?" the cashier asked, her voice flat and devoid of inflection. Section 5. The Currency of Confusion. The day started like any other, with the sun shining brightly in the usual hustle and bustle of the city. I decided to grab a quick bite at McDonald's, a place I frequented often. Little did I know this visit would be anything but ordinary. "Just a number 4, please," I stammered, my voice catching in my throat. The menu was familiar and I had ordered the same meal countless times before, but today, something felt off. The cashier's expression was unreadable, almost as if she was waiting for something more. I reached for my wallet, my hand trembling. It wasn't the first time I had felt nervous, but this was different. There was an air of uncertainty that I couldn't quite place. My fingers fumbled as I pulled out my credit card, hoping to complete the transaction quickly. As I pulled out my credit card, the cashier stared at it blankly. Her eyes seemed to pierce through me, and for a moment I wondered if I had done something wrong. The silence between us grew, making the situation even more uncomfortable. "What's this?" she asked, her voice devoid of emotion. Her question caught me off guard. It was a simple credit card, something I used every day. Why was she acting like she had never seen one before? I felt a wave of confusion wash over me. "You can't use that here." Confusion washed over me. What did she mean I couldn't use my credit card? This was a McDonald's, a global fast food chain. Surely they accepted credit cards. My mind raced as I tried to make sense of her words. "What do you mean? This is a credit card." I tried to explain, hoping to clear up any misunderstanding. But the cashier's expression remained unchanged. It was as if I was speaking a foreign language. The more I tried to explain, the more confused I became. She shook her head slowly. The gesture was almost sympathetic, as if she understood my confusion but couldn't do anything about it. I felt a knot form in my stomach. This was turning into a nightmare, and I had no idea how to wake up from it. "We only accept barter here." Her words echoed in my mind. Barter? In a McDonald's? It sounded absurd. I looked around, half expecting to see hidden cameras or someone jumping out to tell me it was all a prank, but there was nothing. Just the usual hustle and bustle of the restaurant. Barter? What was she talking about? My mind raced as I tried to process the information. Barter was an ancient system of trade, something I had only read about in history books. How could it be possible in today's modern world, especially in a place like McDonald's? This had to be a joke. I laughed nervously, hoping to break the tension, but the cashier's expression remained serious. There was no hint of humor in her eyes. The reality of the situation began to sink in, and I felt a sense of dread. How was I supposed to get my meal if I couldn't use my credit card? The world around me seemed to blur as I stood there, trying to make sense of the bizarre turn of events. Suddenly, a glint of light caught my eye. A man in the corner booth was reading a newspaper. The headline jumped out at me: "Local dog walker wins lottery." It was a story about me. My picture, taken from my social media, stared back at me. But how? The date on the newspaper was tomorrow's date. Panic welled up inside me. I had to get out of there. "Forget it," I mumbled, turning away from the counter. I rushed out of the McDonald's, Sparky scrambling to keep up. The street outside was bathed in the warm glow of the setting sun. The air was filled with the sounds of traffic and distant sirens. The unsettling silence was gone. I looked back at the McDonald's. It was the familiar red and yellow building I knew. Had I imagined the whole thing? I hurried home, my mind racing. What had just happened? Was it all just a stress-induced hallucination? Or had I somehow slipped into another dimension? I unlocked my front door and stepped inside, Sparky bounding ahead of me. The house was exactly as I had left it, but the world outside felt different, altered somehow. I still don't have any answers. I haven't told anyone about my experience. They would think I was crazy, but I can't shake the feeling that something followed me back, something lurking just beyond my perception. Every time I pass that McDonald's, I can't help but feel a shiver down my spine. And sometimes late at night I could swear I hear the faint chime of an unfamiliar bell.